The Korean War, a conflict often called the Forgotten War, yet its impact continues to shape global geopolitics today. Between 1950 and 1953, the Korean Peninsula became a battleground for competing ideologies, communism versus democracy. It was the first major military confrontation of the Cold War, setting the stage for decades of global tension. But how did this war begin? And why did it escalate into one of the most devastating conflicts of the 20th century? Visuals. Animated world map highlighting Korea, Cold War imagery of US and Soviet Union. The Korean War was not just a conflict between North and South Korea, it drew in major world powers, each with their own interests and agendas. The United States and its allies, under the banner of the United Nations, provided significant military support to South Korea. Meanwhile, North Korea was bolstered by aid from China and the Soviet Union. This international involvement transformed the Korean Peninsula into a battleground for Cold War tensions, with far-reaching implications for global geopolitics. The human cost of the Korean War was staggering. Millions of soldiers and civilians lost their lives or were wounded, families were torn apart, and countless people were displaced from their homes. The war left deep scars on the Korean Peninsula, both physically and emotionally. The suffering endured by the Korean people during this time is a stark reminder of the devastating impact of war. The Korean War came to a halt with the signing of an armistice on July 27, 1953. However, this was not a peace treaty, and technically the war has never officially ended. The armistice established the Korean Demilitarized Zone, a buffer zone between North and South Korea. The aftermath of the war saw the Korean Peninsula divided, with both sides remaining in a state of tense military readiness. The conflict's legacy continues to influence the region's political landscape to this day. The Korean War was a pivotal moment in 20th century history, shaping the geopolitical dynamics of the Cold War era. It highlighted the complexities of international alliances and the profound human cost of conflict. As we reflect on this chapter of history, it is essential to remember the lessons learned and strive for a future where peace and cooperation prevail over war and division. North Korea was ready for full-scale war. On June 25, 1950, at dawn, North Korea launched a surprise invasion of South Korea. The well-trained and Soviet-equipped Korean People's Army swiftly crossed the 38th parallel. Within 3 days, the capital Seoul fell. The South Korean army, under-equipped and overwhelmed, retreated southward. Fearing a communist takeover, U.S. President Harry Truman took swift action. The United Nations, led by the United States, formed a military coalition under General Douglas MacArthur. By July, U.S. and South Korean forces had made a desperate last stand at the Pusan perimeter, a small defensive zone in the southeast. If Pusan fell, the war would be over. Enter General Douglas MacArthur. Known for his bold strategies, he proposed an audacious counterattack, an amphibious landing at Incheon. On September 15, 1950, UN forces launched the Incheon landing, a surprise attack behind enemy lines. The move cut off North Korean supply lines, forcing them into retreat. By October, UN forces had recaptured Seoul and pushed deep into North Korea, reaching the Yalu River near the Chinese border. Victory seemed within reach. But then a new player entered the war: China. China had warned against further advances, but MacArthur ignored the warnings. Then, in November 1950, China struck back. Over 300,000 Chinese troops under General Peng Dehuai launched a massive counterattack. Caught off guard, UN forces retreated southward, suffering heavy casualties. By January 1951, Communist forces had recaptured Seoul.
As winter set in, the war became a bloody stalemate. US General Matthew Ridgway took command, stabilizing the front. Seoul was recaptured again in March 1951. By mid-1951, both sides had dug in along the 38th parallel, engaging in brutal trench warfare. Battles like Heartbreak Ridge and Porkchop Hill showed the sheer cost of the conflict.
Peace talks began in July 1951, but they stalled for 2 years. Then, in April 1951, MacArthur was dismissed for pushing to expand the war into China. By 1953, two events changed everything: the election of U.S. President Dwight Eisenhower and the death of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Negotiations resumed, and on July 27, 1953, the war ended with an armistice. But no peace treaty was signed, leaving North and South Korea technically still at war.
Over 3 million people died, including civilians. So, the war hardened the division between North and South Korea. The war intensified US-Soviet tensions and cemented the US policy of containment. The Korean War may be forgotten by some, but its impact continues to shape global geopolitics today.